Hey guys, welcome back for chapter 14 of the book of Luke. I actually took yesterday off because quite honestly, needed the rest. But back on today to wrap up this week. Thank you as always for being here. Let's kick this thing off. You're watching the Bible vlog. This chapter is interesting because about 3/4 of it is Jesus teaching over a meal. You know, one of the best ways to sit down and get to know a person is by sitting down and having a meal together, and it's the same way with Jesus. Now, this meal that Jesus has actually been invited to is being put on by the Pharisees, so Jesus is walking into a bit of a lion's den here. Now, even though on the surface it seems like a nice gesture, the Pharisees are really just seeking a way in which they can criticize Jesus. Now, even though they want to criticize Jesus, they can't ignore what he's been doing, but it's just not being done in a way that they like. Case in point, healing people on the Sabbath. So look at what happens in verses 1 through 6. Now it happened as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath that they watched him closely. And behold, there was a certain man before him who had dropsy. Now if you don't know what dropsy is, it's basically like a swelling in your body from excess fluids. It's horribly painful, and this guy was dealing with it. And Jesus answering spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" But they kept silent, and he took him and healed him and let him go. Then he answered them, saying, "Which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, will not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?" And they could not answer him regarding these things. Now Jesus is really upsetting their theology here. They can't explain the miracle. They can't deny what Jesus said about pulling an animal to safety on the Sabbath, but they just don't like that Jesus keeps getting the best of them. Now, you know, it's easy to look at the Pharisees here and think of them as just incredibly ignorant and prideful, but how many of us fall into this same trap? Let me ask you something. Can you lose a debate and be okay? If someone proves you wrong, do you feel the need to still be right? See, a lot of issue with the Pharisees came down to one problem: pride. They simply didn't want to be wrong. They wanted people to acknowledge them and esteem them, which is the exact topic that Jesus covers next in verses 7 through 11. So listen to this. So Jesus told a parable to those who were invited when he noted how they chose the best places, saying to them, "When you are invited by anyone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in the best place, lest one more honorable than you be invited by him. And he who invited you and him come and say to you, 'Give place to this man,' and then you begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place, so that when he who invited you comes, he may say to you, 'Friend, go up higher.' Then you will have glory in the presence of those who sit at the table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." Now, isn't that true? You know, I have seen this played out so many times, where people who are often the most desperate to be recognized usually haven't earned it, while the person who has earned it is confident in who they are and doesn't really need the recognition. See, Jesus isn't just rebuking their pride, but he's showing that God honors those who recognize their own loneliness and are humble enough to not demand attention. Oh, there's a plane. Plane inside. I just don't give up. Planes like me. By the way, this is not a beer. Just clearing the air on that. Ginger ale. I don't drink. But it sure looks like it. Guys, let me tell you this. The Bible says that a man's gift will make room for him. If you are faithful with what God has called you to do, no matter what that thing is, it won't be long before God keeps giving you more and more responsibility because he knows that you can be trusted. In fact, coming up in 2 chapters, in chapter 16, Jesus says in Luke, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." If you want to see God entrust you with more, be faithful. All right, one more passage to look at here, and this one sounds startling at first, but let's go ahead and read it. Go on over to verses 25 through 30. "Now great multitudes went with him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it, lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him?'" Well, that sounds strange. I mean, can you imagine talking to somebody and they're like, "Yeah, I hate my wife and kids, but Jesus, I love Jesus." What in the world is Jesus talking about here? Well, of course, he doesn't actually mean that you should hate your family. So this is an example of what they call Hebrew hyperbole that shows the importance of our complete devotion to Christ. Our relationship with Jesus is the most most important. Now, interestingly, when Jesus gives the example of erecting a building, he's saying that following him has a cost, especially to these guys back then. Even today, some people have to be willing to risk their lives to follow Jesus. Guys, I will tell you this, while following Jesus always has a cost, the end reward of doing so cannot be overstated. When you know Jesus Christ, you realize he's worth every single sacrifice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is it for this week and this chapter of the book of Luke. Man, almost felt like a day off. All right, guys, well, thank you as always for joining us. Come back tomorrow. How about Monday for chapter 15 of the book by the good Dr. Luke. Hope you all have an amazing weekend. I love your faces, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.